One surprisingly common issue I found in today's media is overly preaching messages. And I'm going to teach you how to avoid that. Rule number one, and this is really the golden rule when it comes to messages and themes, is that your story comes first. Even if you are inspired by the message that you want to get out to the world, your story comes first. Keep the message in the back of your mind. That'll help you figure out how the story is going to unfold and where it starts and where it ends and what the character arcs look like. But that should not be your main focus when crafting the story. You want to create an interesting world with interesting characters and an exciting issue to solve. So always a compelling story comes first. If you don't have an exciting story, it doesn't matter if you have the best message in the world that would solve all of the world's issues. No one is going to read it. So that what this means is that all the actions, the reactions, and the consequences of what the characters do will ultimately unfold the theme. If you have a character that is seeking revenge and you want to say that revenge is bad, then you are going to show in an interesting and exciting and empathetic way of why revenge is bad. You're going to show this character something happens that makes them want revenge. And it better be a good reason. It better be an understandable reason. And then they're going to go on this quest for revenge. And through the story, you should see that their desire for vengeance is going to hurt them. It's going to hurt the people around them. And ultimately, at the end, whether or not they get to enact their vengeance or not, perhaps it leaves them feeling hollow and empty and it didn't fix anything, right? So in that scenario, you're not going to say at any point that revenge is bad. You're going to show it through the story, the character's actions, and the consequences of their actions. And no matter what the message you're trying to send, this is how it should be done. It needs to be based off of what the characters do. So people ultimately learn from their mistakes. Sometimes they can learn from other people's mistakes. And more excitingly and more entertainingly, we can learn from the mistakes of characters. And that's ultimately what your story can do. Rule number 2, never state your message in the story. As the narrator or as another character, do not say what the story was about at any point. So if you got it in there, take it out. Because if you did a good job writing the story, it doesn't need to be said. And saying it comes across as cheesy. It also insults the reader's ability to infer information, and it's just kind of annoying. I recently read a middle grade book that didn't have really strong character arcs and it didn't have a particularly strong message in it. It was mostly like a bunch of shenanigans happening, and then at the very end, this older character was like, "Well, we learned this about friendship." And I was like, that is not what this story said at all. So you don't want to do that. If you did a good enough job writing it, whether the person realizes it or not, they'll pick up on the message. Rule number 3, no character monologues. Stop this. A lot of characters at some point will monologue or they'll choose some other character out, basically stating this isn't right, this is how you should do it. And it's not an effective tactic unless someone already agrees with that. And that's really not the people you're trying to influence anyway. So when you do that, it feels like the reader's being lectured. They feel insulted. They feel annoyed. Nobody likes it. It's not a good way to get your message across. And maybe you're saying, well, I know plenty of people in real life that do that, so why can't my characters? We're supposed to reflect real life, right? Yes, to a point. It's also the same as we have a lot of nonsense scenes in life and a lot of nonsense dialogue that doesn't lead to anything, but you don't put that in books because it's not effective. So even though maybe you or somebody you know is someone that often finds themselves kind of lecturing, we don't want characters that do that because it does not translate well into fiction. Ultimately, what it boils down to, no one wants to become aware that they're being influenced, that they're being told messages when they're just trying to relax and be entertained. Now, number 4, this is especially true when you're tackling like really complicated issues or really complex things like war or socio-political, socioeconomic type issues. You want to be able to tackle different sides with nuance. Even if you have just one POV character, you don't want every character on the opposing side to be this pure evil villain or everyone to be like foolish or portrayed in negative ways, because people are complex, and no matter what you believe, everyone has reasons for it. Everyone's justified in their mind on why they do what they do. So even your bad guys or people on the side of the bad guys need to have good reasons, and they need to be complex characters. So perhaps they do something that is bad, but then they're also going to do things that are good or not so bad. They're going to have moments of kindness or empathy. And this is important because it helps us humanize others. And then that also makes villains way more interesting when they're complex. I will give this one caveat. It is nice once in a while just to have like a pure evil, chaotic character, but that's not going to be everybody, and that's not going to be in most stories. So you want something a little more complicated. And then even among your good guys, they should have a variety of beliefs and motivations. Oftentimes, some of the favorite type characters are they start off as thieves or they start off with selfish motives, and throughout the story, they become better people. A good example of making your protagonist more complex or fun, we'll just use an easy Disney example with Tangled. You have Flynn Rider. He starts off as a thief, he's got his own selfish motivations, but throughout the story, he becomes a better guy and he decides he's going to leave his thieving ways behind. And just how our protagonist type characters are can be that way, our villains can be the same, whether they have a good character arc where they become good, or whether they were once a good person and had a negative character arc. All right, this 5 is really specific to Christian writers and a lot of the times Christian fiction. So there is a difference. If you're writing Christian fiction, a lot of it is more allegorical. If you're just a Christian writer, you're just writing stories that can appeal to anyone, and you're a Christian. So with Christian fiction, when we're talking about allegorical stories, we don't want it to be too on the nose. Whereas C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe really worked well in his time, it would not work well now as a brand new book. You'd want something a little more nuanced. When it comes specifically to Christian fiction, we want to avoid being cheesy. We tend to be really guilty about that, and that's why a lot of people don't want to consume Christian music or Christian entertainment, is because they find it really cheesy. So the added challenge that we have is how can we make something a Christian fiction while also making it intense and interesting? And that really boils down back to principle number 1, the narrative comes first. You want characters that are going to be complex, and you want a world that's complex and cultures that are complex, right? We want to make it interesting. You want characters that are going to make mistakes and have to live with those mistakes. They're going to struggle to be good. And that's not saying you can't have a character that is a pretty good character by all stretches of the imagination, but they need flaws. Maybe fear is a flaw, maybe indecisiveness, maybe there's something else, or they make a really bad decision, but otherwise they usually make good ones. A good example of a book I read recently that is a Christian fiction that unfolded the story really well was Nadine Brand's Wistress. In the story, there's the do-ragness. There's the woman and there's the man. And both of them end up making really bad mistakes that cost a hefty price. And they have to live with this mistake at the beginning of the story. And throughout it, they're still struggling to make the right decisions. They're using the information they have, and they're using what they know and what they're capable of. But there's also their own desires and the shortcuts they might want to take. And they're still trying to do the best they possibly can, but they struggle because they're human. And that's something we want to keep in mind when writing Christian fiction, is that our characters should still struggle. Our characters should make mistakes and then have hefty consequences. They shouldn't be just little slaps on the wrist. And now, when we're talking about religion, whether you write Christian fiction or you're just a Christian who writes other types of speculative fiction, if you're putting religion in your story, which is often very popular in fantasy for good reason. You want to make it complex. You want to show all different walks of life and all different belief systems towards the religion. And your characters, especially like on your good side and even on the bad side, need to have a mix of beliefs and feelings towards the religion because it reflects real life. Whether you're writing Christian fiction or you're just writing fiction that happens to have religions in it, if one of your messages in your story involves religion, you want to make sure that it is complex. For Christians, the big issue I see in a lot of the fiction is that everyone either believes the same thing or they absolutely don't believe it at all. And you want to mix and more complicated belief systems built in. I mean, just look at Christianity today. There's so many different denominations that have the same core belief, but maybe slight differences. And a lot of times, sometimes these little differences can cause contentions between the different denominations. So you kind of want to take that and also put it into your world to make it more complex and more realistic. And in the opposite end, what I see a lot in the secular world when it involves religion, they often come in with a negative view towards religion, and every religious person is either an idiot or they're these corrupt individuals. And it does the same thing. It's insulting and it falls flat. What it all boils down to is that you want to write with nuance and understanding of people within your own culture and then people who are also in different cultures. It's going to create a more empathetic and realistic story that really embraces the complexities of the world. And the last rule, something always to keep in mind, is that a good story makes you think. It doesn't tell you what to think. So if your story is telling people what to think, something is amiss. Instead, you want people to close the book and sit back and think about it. What did they just read? What does it all mean? And if you spell it out for them, they're not going to have that moment. They're not going to go and discuss it with other people at the book club. They're not going to go online to forums and get everyone else's analysis of your work. That's a good little marketing tip for you. You want that buzz. Ultimately, when you're creating books, when you have to remember the reason that people are reading them, and it's for entertainment. Yes, like I've said in a previous video, no matter what you do, there will be messages in your story. So we want to be careful about what we're doing and be thoughtful about it. But ultimately, we want to write something that's going to be entertaining and that people are going to love. All right, so here is the list again in case you just want it nice and condensed. 1, the narrative always comes first. Build a complex, interesting story and then worry about the messages. 2, never state the message in the story, never state the lesson anywhere. Rule number 3, no monologues. Do not have a character monologue and tell others how they should behave. Doesn't work. No good. 4, show different mindsets, show nuance, have complex good guys and bad guys. And then 5, always remember that your story should leave readers thinking and not telling them what to think. If you follow those rules, you're going to find that your story is going to be a lot richer and it's not going to be so preachy. Now, granted, astute readers are always going to pick up on messages and they might just not like the general message you have to send, but at least you didn't do it in a preachy way. So get out there and write some good stories. Any books out there you think were a really good example of messaging, or maybe even a really bad example? Let me know.